This week on Tim Tschida, the Show podcast, Curt Schilling tells some hilarious behind-the-scenes stories about Major League umpires. Now, here's Tim Tschida.
We were in San Diego, and you were pitching for the Diamondbacks, and old Jack Murphy, and we entered an exit through the first base dugout, and the Diamondbacks won on, I guess it was probably Friday night, and they were coming on the field to shake hands, and I hear, Timmy, and I look, and it's Curt. He's looking at me, and he goes, you and me tomorrow night, ready? Whoa, yeah, get some speed, rest up, and I looked back, and I went, oh, no, I'm going out, I'm eating, I'm drinking, we'll see you tomorrow, man. And lo and behold, he takes a perfecto into the 8th inning. And I mean, I'm sitting back there. Now, when you get to the 7th as an umpire, it can't help but affect you in the sense that, okay, don't change anything.
Yeah.
Stay where you've been, because now if you reach out there and get one of those, it just hurts the credibility of the pitcher, because guys will say, well, if I was getting that pitch, I'd have thrown it.
It's a karma thing.
No, you gotta, and then. But I thought at that point you were so strong that night. I said, it's gonna be a flare, broken bat kind of thing. That if anything busts this up, that's what it is. Well, the Padres had a young catcher up there named Ben Davis, and Ben is a 2-0 game. All right, so there's arguments on both sides here. Ben lays one down, drag bunts one, gets it past the mound, and he's safe at first, so the perfecto's gone. And now I'm back there. I'm going back behind the plate, and I go, if I had any other pitcher out there tonight, I'm sure the next guy's going down. I said, but this guy doesn't pitch that way. It's just, he's going to get the next guy out. That's all he cares about, is getting the next guy out, or getting a double play, or doing whatever. I don't have to worry about that. And sure enough,
the worst part was it was a horrible bunt. He popped it up, and he hit it to the slowest white guy in the big leagues, Jay Bell.
Yeah,
and it was just a horror. And a lot of people had comments after the game. I didn't say anything. I never said a word about
I tell you, I remember what you said. You did say something that still makes me laugh to this day, because Davis, said, well, anybody, because the media was saying, do you feel out of line, blah, blah, blah. He says, well, anybody that, wants to second guess my bunting obviously didn't see how I did against him the first 2 at-bats. He made me look sick, know. And then you said, I'm just surprised he had the guts to do it.
Right.
That's all you said. It wasn't a shot at him. It wasn't sour grapes or anything. And you still won the ball game,
Yep. But that was probably one of the 5 nights of my life where I was on the mound and I could have told him what was coming. I was just on.
Yes, you were. And
I was on with an umpire who I was on with, in the sense that he was consistent the whole night. And it was my Kerry Wood game. Like, I was making these guys look stupid, and I knew how good I was, and I knew it wasn't. And it was my fault, because I threw a curveball that hung up there, and he popped it up into the 5 square feet of infield where it would have landed.
Yeah, exactly. Any place else, he's out.
Game. So to Timmy's point, the tying run's now at the plate. I can't be worried about this dumb shit.
Right.
And baseball is the ultimate equalizer too, in that we play 162 games. I'm going to see you again. If I really want to drill you, I'll get my chance.
It'll happen. And the other thing is, you're the kind of guy that can drill somebody because you have command. Right. And command means, you can throw your fastball where you want, and you're going to hit him in his ribs, where he's going to have a bruise for a couple of weeks. You're not going to be near his head. It's not going to be anything dangerous. Right. But the other thing, and I never looked up, I don't really do the statistic thing, but I would assume that your run support career-wise was probably not very high, because the tendency is for teams, when you got a guy out there, they forget about offense sometimes. Hey, boys, let's score some runs here and really make it easy. But they say, well, we got 2, we got 3 tonight. Schill's going for us.
Right.
Oh, he's a doink and a home run away from a close ball game here, fellas.
Yep. And I always, with Terry, when Terry came to Philadelphia, I picked my lineup. We were not a good team.
No.
So he would let me pick my lineup, and I would put the 8 best defensive players we had out there.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, just score 1 or 2 and we're fine.
I remember Terry telling us at home plate in Miami. In fact, I had the plate that night, and he says, well, we got a chance. He says, we got Schill going tonight. He says, the 1 out of every 5 nights we got a chance. Otherwise, we can't beat anybody.
I think there was even a stretch that they went like 4-22, and all 4 were your wins.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me in a bit.
And I hated it. I loved that I was ace of staff, but I hated it because if we didn't win on the day I pitched, I felt like I let the whole week down.
Yeah.
And I was working with a lot of young pitchers who were trying, that was, I always had my young pitchers when they came to the big leagues. I would walk them through fundamentals.
Yeah.
Like, and I would always talk, all right, here's your umpire tonight. It's Joe West. You don't do anything but throw the baseball. No comments, no body language, nothing. I said, he'll call the strikes and the balls. He might call a little tighter strike zone early on just to find out what kind of kid you are. But don't take the bait. Because if you do, then you're not going to make it to the 5th. And I had that insight to umpires, and I learned that from Roger Clemens. Roger was a guy who early in my career told me, I have a book on umpire. I'm like, why the hell would you have a book on umpires? Tony Gwynn, same thing. And I came to find out that is what it was. The greatest worked the hardest.
Yeah.
It wasn't the other way around. Like I look at Bonds and think everybody, oh, he was gifted. Bonds used to hit off left-handed pitchers every day of the offseason.
Yeah.
A great story. Cal Ripken, he used to have he had a parquet floor basketball gym at his house, big, and NBA players used to come over and play basketball during the winter. And I was young. I was my first couple years call-ups in the big leagues, and I went to his house one night, and I got there about an hour early, and he had a batting cage, and he's got the machine set on 105, and he's got a stack of new gloves, and he's got a base, and he's having the machine throw it to him, and he's working on his snap tag. And I'm like, dude, you're Cal Ripken. And it's like, but that was who, and if you knew his dad, you knew that's exactly who he was. It was about playing the game hard, playing the game right. Cal, I don't know, and I could be wrong, I don't know that Cal Ripken ever got ejected from the home plate
one
for
time,
arguing balls.
Just once.
For balls and strikes.
Yeah, and Drew Coble ejected him, and they asked Drew after the game, what was it like? He said it was like throwing God out of Sunday school.
Yep. Because there were guys that you, and that was also one of the ways you got a feel for young umpires. Mm-hmm. There was always we always had this saying as players, and umpires know this too. People aren't here to see you.
Nope.
And the umpires that tried to make fans see them were the Angel Hernandez of the world. But okay, so I'm gonna tell you my Joe West story.
Bring
it. Philadelphia hated Joe West. They had literally sold dartboards in these stores that had Joe West's face on it. And I'm at a banquet with Darren Dalton and Joe West in the winter of 1996. And I'm sitting next to Joe, and Darren's on the other side, and we're all three speaking. And it was Darren first, and then Joe, and then me. And Joe is revealing himself to be a really funny guy.
Hilarious.
Funny as hell.
Hilarious.
He's doing shit. So Darren gets up there and tells a story. And the punchline of Darren's joke was, to Joe West, this was 8 inches. And everybody laughs. Everybody thinks it's funny. So Joe goes up there and he tells a bunch of stories, and his punchline, he said to Darren Dalton clearly thinks this is 8 inches. And everybody laughs. So I get up there and I said, it dawned on me tonight, something I've been trying to figure out all summer. I said, I was in Montreal and I saw Joe West out during the day. And I saw Joe West, and there was a beautiful blonde with him. And I looked at Joe, and I looked at her, and I looked at Joe, and I looked back at her, and I'm like, this doesn't add up. And I said, I finally realized that to Joe West, this is 8 inches. And the place erupts. Fast forward to July of that year. 97, the Marlins are going to the World Series.
Yeah.
I'm in Florida. Joe West is behind the plate. And I walked Gary Sheffield on strike 6. And I've walked 4 guys now. And I don't walk people. And nope. I'm like, what the So I start to walk in towards home plate, and Joe walks out and kind of flips me a ball, and I keep walking towards him, and I go, Joe, what the fuck? He goes, that ball's about 8 inches outside, big boy. And I turned around and walked away and never said another word to him ever I was like, okay, like, that's messed up. But
that's the asshole that I'm talking about.
Yes,
that's
yes.
deep inside.
But
Yeah,
pencil.
Al, you just don't know him. John McSherry was clearly the best umpiring instructor, he and Richie Garcia, that I've ever had. And John always used to describe Joe. He says, let me explain to you guys. This is at umpire school. Let me explain Joe West to you. He says, if you told Joe West that in order to get this pitch right, you're going to have to first run through that brick wall and then come back here and then call the pitch. Where do I start? That's Joe. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. There's no gray area with Joe. And there are no superstars in Joe's life on the field. Every player was treated the same. And he demanded respect from you, and he gave it back with interest. The only people that don't, I get it all the time, because he's the villain here and there and everything else. I say the only people that don't like Joe West are people that have never met him and really know him. He is as good a guy. He is a loyal friend. He is generous. He is gregarious. And if he's met you once, he is a friend for life. And I could send him, like, if he was in another city and I say, hey, my cousins live there. Is there any way, Timmy, how many do you need? What do you need? What do you need?
Yep.
No, I love Joe. I really, really do.
And that was, again, the whole getting the media guide stuff. Like, when you understand the umpires to this degree, the good umpires knew that we were out there competing for a lot of money. And Joe was okay with people paying attention to him. In fact, if in the New York-Boston series, there was a feeling for a lot of years that he was a Yankee fan, because it seemed like every call went against the Red Sox and every call went for the Yankees and stuff. But Joe, when I got to know Joe, I realized Joe just wants to make the right call every single play.
Time. Yep.
And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm
you know
okay.
What you're getting. You know what you're getting.
And my big problem was going back to CB Buckner. And again, and Angel Hernandez, my biggest problem was I almost looked at it like I look at the modern day police officers, in the sense that I'm going to back you 110%, but I need you to get rid of your bad eggs. Like, there was no system for, and that was always the players' issues, in a sense. Like, the umpires are the only people on the field that aren't being promoted and demoted based on performance.
Right.
But you can see where there's a dichotomy there. It would be a challenge. But if you're going to have a horrible game and not pay the price for it, I have a problem with that. And players always had a problem with that. And I wanted the umpires to police themselves. If you've got a bad umpire in your crew, either get him out or make him better. And to CB Buckner, like, I'll never forget this. It was in Arizona again, and after CB had made a couple really bad calls at first base, and after the game, I went out and two veteran umpires had CB at first base working on his positioning. And my first thought was, oh, wow, that's cool. My second thought was, we're in the big leagues.
Yeah.
Is he really needing to work on his first base positioning in the big leagues? And that was, to me, CB Buckner was DEI before it was a real thing. He was in the big leagues because but that didn't do him any favors.
Well, that's the problem there is without getting too far into particulars here, though, that CB learned early on that he was going to go to the big leagues.
Right.
Too early on.
Yep.
And he didn't learn or take the time to learn to do the little things. And all sports, but especially baseball, is a game of little things. Umpiring is doing little things. If you do the little things, they never become big things. And if you have bad habits, Richie always used to say habits. You got to have habits. You got to have good habits, and you got to do it all the time. And I remember when Richie retired and became a supervisor, there were some National League guys now that he's supervising, and they didn't like him as a supervisor because he was pretty critical. And I said, well, you may not know this, but he loves you as an umpire.
Right.
And they look at me like, why? It's because you do the little things. You take every play at first base with the same distance, the same angle, with the same anticipation that it's going to be close. Don't think for 1 minute that he doesn't see that. He sees it, and he writes it down. Right. And that was the other thing he always told me was, don't think that they don't notice. Talking about the players. He says, because they do. They do. He said, think about it. Half of them are sitting over there, not even in the game, right? and they're down 8-1, and it's the 6th inning, they got nothing better to do than watch you, and they don't need to look out there and see you mailing it in. All right, those are the games. The big games will fire you up no matter what. You know what you got to do, but you got to be out there for those, those 7-1 games. And
when it's July, you're in Colorado, and it's 16-1 in the 6th.
And they've lost 10 straight.
Everybody's like, this game's over. You can't umpire the game any differently than it's the 7th game of the World Series.
And it's the manager, he's on the hot seat now. Those guys are much more on the hot seat. They don't need to look out there and see you, not taking it seriously. And I remember Bob Davidson was on my crew late in his career, and Bobby, same thing with Bob. The only people that don't like Bob are people that don't know Bob. And Bob is a lot like Joe. And again, Bob is funny. He's gregarious. He is no nonsense. Bob, balking Bob, you know all about it. You ever call a balk on you?
Oh my God, I got a story there too.
Okay, well, we'll get to it. So, Bob was on my crew, and one of the things that Richie had taught me all the time was, as a crew chief, he says, you never ask your crew members to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. Okay. So if you want your guy out there on that fly ball to center field that looks like a can of corn, all of a sudden he loses the ball in the lights or the sun, and now you got a circus catch and you're standing at second base, I'm not going to protect you. You got to protect yourself on that one. Get out there. Get out there. So it's about June, and we're in Kansas City, and the Royals were at the time were maybe already like 15 to 20 games out. And we were walking on the field, or in the dressing room. Bob said to me, I've never been on a crew like this before. I said, well, what are you talking about? He goes, well, it's June 1st. We got like one ejection. We don't even get arguments. I said, well, there's a reason for that. He said, what? I said, well, part of it is you're working with me, but more of it's a part of I learned from Richie. And you guys do what I ask you to do, and I do it too. I said, don't think they don't notice. They see it, and they'll cut you slack. You can make mistakes. You don't want to do it. You don't want to get in the habit of it, but they will cut you slack, period. Well, lo and behold, that day, Bob's got third, and fly ball to the left, and Alex Gordon is running hard for it to the line, and he dives, and he makes a really, really nice catch. And he comes up with the ball, and Bob is right there, right on it. Now, in the National League, you didn't have to go out on fly balls. You could pick and choose, right? Well, the American League, we went out on every ball. And Bob wasn't used to that, but he became a fan of it. And the inning ends, go out. The next half inning, Alex is going back out to left field, and he walks over to Bob, and he goes, hey, we really appreciate the effort. And then he just went out to his position.
Yep.
Right? And then Bob looked at me, I looked at him, and I went,
played for. Those are the little wins you played for.
Those are the things you do.
Yeah.
And guys that have trouble in the major leagues right now don't do those things. They work their little zone sometimes, and you can't do that. You just can't do it. And again, they notice it. They notice it, and they'll remember that. They won't remember the time you busted your hump to do this, that, because you got to do that all the time. You should be doing it all the time. And we also, I would never allow anybody on my crew that would say, well, this is the big leagues. I don't have to do that. You are in the big leagues. That's why you have to do that. Right. Because we should be setting the pace for everybody all the way down to Little League. They should look at us as examples, not that you work your tail off to get there. You work your tail harder to get a greater reputation. Now you got to work twice as hard to keep it.
Come back soon for more great calls on Tim Tschida, the show. And you can join Curt Schilling on his The Complete Game podcast. The link is found in the description below, or use your favorite search page.